What can the city do to foster beautiful landmark architecture? And can we have an architecture review committee with teeth?
That's a great question. We do have a architecture review committee who's named the Design Review Committee. And interestingly, it has teeth in some context. We proposed to redesign the Bathurst Bridge. We've got to rebuild it over the railway land south of Front Street. And our engineers designed it, and the design review panel said it wasn't acceptable and sent it back. And it's our panel that we appointed, which was rather interesting. But I was glad they're doing their job. Their job is to set far higher standards for architecture. The challenge is that legally, it's very hard for us to impose it because ultimately everything gets appealed to the OMB. And this is, this anachronism and the province tried to deal with this, but they were really tepid, to be perfectly honest. They didn't really deal with the issue. And I think it's a real affront to democracy that the people that you elect make decisions, after working with the community, make decisions, and then an arbitrary panel that's appointed by the province overturns them. And so the Design Review Committee, I think, has done a lot to raise the standard of architecture. Developers used to say it's the 5th priority, and people will only pay for 3 priorities. Environmental needs were the 6th. But we've now got both of those in the top 3 somehow, and the standard is getting better, but the legal regime that the city works in makes it difficult. I think it's really offensive. We're Canada's 6th largest government. We provide all of the basic services that allow people not just to exist, but to thrive in this city. Everything that touches people's real lives except healthcare, we provide part of healthcare, public health. And the idea that this elected body should be overturned on decisions like this by unelected people, I find fundamentally problematic. It's, we either elect governments or we don't. And governments are accountable, and they're accountable every 4 years, and that's the way it should be handled. So it's a longish answer, but we've made the process as strong as we can, and I think that's something that will last. I can't even see Mr. Smitherman removing that, unlike privatizing the TTC.
He's the one who wants to do that?
Yes. You can look it up.
I never pay attention to that guy. Now, what do you think about Joe Mihevc, John Sewell, and Adam Vaughan? This is another question from the audience. Thank you to whoever submitted it. Joe Mihevc, John Sewell, and I believe Adam Vaughan, all from the left, have all supported Smitherman. What do you think of that?
Well, Adam's a bit different. It's not precisely what he said. Joe Mihevc said the same thing to me in 2003.
Which was?
You should drop out because you're behind in the polls. So that's what I think of it.
Okay. All right. Oh my God.
Thank you.
Well, somebody writes far too small, so their question is not going to be asked. Well, it'll take most of the rest of the evening.
I can ask myself my own question.
How would you deal with the fear that council and the citizens have in controlling the police services budget?
It's a very significant challenge. That's a great question because whoever wrote it's obviously well informed. And I just got to give a preamble here, because some of the nonsense that's said by a couple of the mayoral candidates, without naming them, they're still in it and not named Joe, about tax freezes and cuts and things. 2/3 of the city's budget is emergency services, which is mostly police. It's basically $1 billion, all from property tax revenues. The social services, which are mandated by the province down to the number of social workers we have to hire for people who are receiving social assistance. It's that narrow. You can't even change the administration of it. It's all done like that. Or the TTC. And the emergency services costs are going up because of arbitrated wage settlements. which are far in excess, by the way, of the settlement we had with CUPE last year, and way in excess. And the TTC's costs are going up predominantly because of increased ridership, which is really good news. It's at its highest level ever because of deliberate strategies, but it costs, that's 2/3 of the budget. So anybody who wants to freeze taxes means that they've got to accommodate all those rising expenditures and then find cuts in the other third. Well, what's the other third? Well, it's everything that makes a city vibrant. You know, it's the arts grants, it's community investments, it's parks, it's recreation, it's the Toronto Public Library. That's where the cuts will be coming. And the question speaks to the police budget. Well, one of the things that I tried to do, you may remember that there was a police chief before Bill Blair who said, not that helpfully to my election campaign in 2003, that we needed 400 more police officers. Well, we couldn't afford 400 more police officers.
You delivered them.
Yes, and how did I deliver them?
Huh?
How?
Tax and spend, the usual lefty stuff.
No. We paid for 100. The province paid for 100. And Bill Blair, when he was police chief, took 250 officers who'd been on desk jobs and actually put them on the street where they were supposed to be. And his predecessor was demanding that we hire new ones. Right? And that's one of the ways we tried to address the police budget, was to get the officers who we'd already hired and paid for actually doing the job that they were supposed to be doing, which was policing on the streets of Toronto. And one of the reasons I think that crime's down in Toronto is because that strategy of getting them on the streets has been really successful. So, that's what we tried to do, was push back against the demand for more and more and more resources, work creatively to reuse the resources more efficiently and more effectively, prioritize our spending. I think people call that fiscal responsibility or something.
No, it's referred to as out-of-control spending.
Perhaps by highly paid columnists, John.
You're so behind the times. Here's a question that's interesting. You've spoken about your successes and your priorities. If there was one thing you could have done differently, what would it be and why?
Well, people are always asking me that, actually, and I try to avoid answering it because a couple of things I might have done differently were about personnel in the civil service, and it's completely inappropriate for me to talk about that. So I won't. I mean, I do wish there hadn't been a strike. I think it was an extraordinarily short-sighted move on behalf of our union leadership. There were some particular circumstances, and if you spoke to Ann Dembinski from CUPE 79, she would say, well, I represent women who are lowly paid women working at places like Home for the Aged. Why should they accept 6% when the police, fire, and ambulance all got arbitrated settlements at 12%? That was actually really what the strike was about. That's not what got written, but that's what the strike was about. It's a principled position, but unfortunately in the midst of a global recession, when everybody's lucky to keep their jobs, and when the city can't afford to give these lowly paid women the same thing that people in uniform got, it was really, I think, a very bad decision on their part, and obviously none of us in this city wanted to live through that. The settlement we got saved the city $172 million permanently, which doesn't seem to have gotten very much coverage in the media, frankly. And, if you'd been there, John, I'm not buttering you up because your questions are over, it's just the audience questions, but John was actually the columnist during the previous strike, in which the mayor chose a different strategy than I did. He antagonized the workers, called them names, and they were very solid and they never buckled. And the province imposed an arbitrator, and the arbitrator awarded the union every single thing it asked, everything. And I know that because you said it in your column at the time. And, we had a different strategy. We didn't try to antagonize the workers, and eventually the union leadership realized they were out of sync with their members, and they came around and accepted our offer. But it was a difficult time, and I really wish it hadn't happened because it's not good for those members.
Do you think it's had